We're now through another week of WWE programming on the road to Money in the Bank, thank God. But more importantly, we're through what's been a very dark and eerie week for pro wrestling. Obviously, you had Howard Finkel passing away at the age of 69. Just rest in peace to the Fink, the greatest ring announcer ever for pro wrestling, and many people say all of sports. Howard Finkel and his "and new," the way he said that, the way he made so many iconic pro wrestling moments go from already special to that bit more special and memorable. The way Fink was able to do that, along with his passion for pro wrestling, he was one of the very first, if not the first employee for WWE, hired by Vince McMahon Sr. back in the late 1970s. He's been employed for 40 odd years. Just the Fink has been around forever. His passion for the business is second to none. So rest in peace, Howard Finkel. I just wanted to put this in at the start. Okay, I'm not gonna do a long-winded diatribe about it. I just want to keep it concise because you guys know Howard Finkel probably means something to you. He means something to everyone, to different extents. Some of you might be a bit younger and you haven't seen or heard about pretty much any of his stuff. Some of you might be in your 30s, in your 40s, 50s, seen Howard Finkel. Grew up with Howard Finkel's voice alongside Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan on commentary, and have those guys be the iconic voices of your childhood. So it really ranges. He means more to some people, a bit less to others, but I think we can all agree Howard Finkel just left an incredible mark on the wrestling industry. Some of the best moments in the history of this business can be put down to his voice, adding to it. And new... No, that was terrible. The winner of this match, and new WWF champion. No, I've just ruined his legacy there, but so forget about that. Howard Finkel, rest in peace, you'll be missed. So that's how I wanted to just open this video. But yeah, there's plenty to talk about in the Elitist Effect Part 2 of Episode 2. In Episode 1, it was like a special edition about the Women's Revolution and how WWE have made a complete mess of it and how they've completely botched it. In this Episode 2, Part 2, we're going to be talking about all the news, all the pro wrestling stuff of note in the past couple of days. So we're going to be talking about Roman Reigns and how Vince McMahon doesn't want or demands and requires that WWE do not mention Roman Reigns at all on WWE programming. In other words, Vince McMahon wants Roman Reigns to get the CM Punk treatment. I could say the Chris Benoit treatment, but that's a bit dramatic. I'm going to say the CM Punk treatment. The don't mention him is Vince wants Roman to get that treatment. So we're going to be talking about that in this podcast today. Also on the podcast, we're talking about a few more NXT releases. Now, this wasn't the big NXT kind of overhaul of releases like I expected. And like I said would probably happen when I made that first wave of releases video a few days ago. I expected that Vince McMahon, he'd look at the NXT roster after letting go 40-odd talents and producers and whatnot on the main roster. I thought Vince would look at NXT UK, look at 205 Live, and say to himself, let's get rid of them. Let's get rid of the World Wrestling Federation. So more on the releases situation. There's plenty to talk about there. So I'll go in depth with the NXT releases. From there, we'll talk about the new television taping schedule, which the scheduling is so difficult. This whole TV rights stuff WWE have going on, Vince trying to appease NBC and Fox, but at the same time appease his talents. It's a lose-lose situation for Vince, but regardless, they've released their taping schedule, so I'll talk about that and more on that. From here, we have the first pro wrestler to die of the virus. This one I'll just touch on later in the video. Is not someone pretty much any of you would know, or maybe a few of you, but it's hardly a big name. But I just want to address that. Also, the AEW and NXT ratings. This week, I'll actually address it. Last week, I said that I would, but I didn't get around to it. Here, I'll actually address the ratings, which, at this point, the ratings don't really matter because NXT and AEW are both pretty much dead for ratings. Because with no crowds on Wednesday nights for pro wrestling, no one really cares outside of the real hardcores. And we really saw that with the viewership this week. So, I'll talk about the Wednesday night ratings. From there, I'll talk about previews for what the Money in the Bank card's shaping up to be, and what Monday Night Raw and Friday Night Smackdown for this coming week are going to look like. So expect this to come in the coming weeks and coming months for the Elitist Effect. In this final episode or final part of each episode for the weekend, I'll preview what we've got to quote-unquote look forward to coming up for this week of pro wrestling on Raw and Smackdown, which most of the time it's going to be crap. what we've got coming on Raw, it doesn't look great. What we've got coming on SmackDown looks even worse, to be honest. I mean, oh my god, I'm looking at it now. Jesus Christ. So that's what you've got to look forward to for this episode today. Hopefully you guys enjoy the Elitist effect. Be sure to drop a like on this video because it's really appreciated when you do. It makes the video seen by more people, gets it more trending in the algorithm. So it's really appreciated if you do that. Gets the channel growing. So drop a like on this video. And without further ado, let's get into the Elitist effect, episode 2, part 2. I mean, personally, I'm still embarrassed about that Howard Finkel impression. That was absolutely god-awful, but I hope you guys will forgive me for that. Anyway, without further ado, Elitist Effect, Episode 2, Part 2. We're beginning with Vince McMahon instructing that Roman Reigns' name is not to be spoken on WWE television. So basically, as I said a little bit earlier, Vince McMahon wants WWE to give Roman Reigns the CM Punk / Chris Benoit treatment. The avoid bringing him up at all costs, the do not mention him treatment. Now, I'll say this. It's fairly hypocritical for WWE to do this, in my opinion, because we've got to remember, this is the same Vince McMahon who, when Roman Reigns had to vacate the championship, the Universal title, in October 2018 due to the recurrence of leukemia, Reigns had to go away. Reigns was off TV for matters about himself, which completely understandable, fighting leukemia in that situation, dealing with the virus and protecting his 2 newborn children, his newborn twins. So Reigns, he's doing these things obviously for his family, and that's completely understandable. But Vince, in that situation, made sure to shoehorn Roman Reigns' name into everything. Remember the Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins feud for the IC title back in the end of 2018? I think most of you, if you're remembering that feud, you're thinking of those Roasting Raw episodes I reviewed, Dean Ambrose getting needle injections, and you're thinking about Seth Rollins Dean Ambrose and the Bane masks. That feud, remember Ambrose vs. Rollins? In that feud, literally Vince McMahon made sure that Dean Ambrose would say a line most weeks about Roman Reigns and his leukemia. They shoehorned Roman Reigns into WWE programming when he wasn't a part of anything. Okay, when Reigns had to go back into remission for leukemia and he was off TV for months and you didn't know when he was coming back, WWE made sure that they mentioned Roman Reigns in the agenda then. But now we've got this story. Vince McMahon instructed Roman Reigns' name not to be spoken on WWE TV. So now Vince wants to give Roman Reigns the CM Punk treatment. I see. But when the agenda was really up and going back in 2018, make sure that Ambrose says horrible, just thoughtless, heartless lines about Reigns' leukemia because Reigns is a part of the storyline. Remember the Chris Jericho, John Moxley podcast back a year ago now? When Moxley talked about his emancipation inside the WWE, how he wanted to leave, and it was all about saying Reigns' name on TV when he wasn't a part of anything. Well, now in 2020, we're in much the same situation. Roman Reigns, he's not a part of anything, okay? Because he couldn't compete he chose not to compete versus Goldberg at WrestleMania 36, the Universal title. We unfortunately had to get Braun Strowman in that position, so now the SmackDown episodes are even harder to watch. Braun Strowman coming out the Universal title, the episode we saw just now, a couple of hours back as of making this video, literally, Braun Strowman coming out on a moment of piss. Are you serious? And then last week, Braun Strowman having a mic confrontation with Shinsuke Nakamura about knock-knock jokes. This is eye-gouging. So, Braun Strowman's feuding with Bray Wyatt now. Meanwhile, Roman Reigns off TV altogether. Okay, his wife gave birth to newborn twins. So, the Reigns family, the Anoa'i family, and now has 5 children. So, good for them. That's wonderful for them. So the Reigns, he has his children to worry about. Understandably, he's not on WWE TV. I don't see why he'd want to be on TV. He's taking a stand for the roster by doing that, by not competing. So good for Roman Reigns. He's off TV, and Vince McMahon instructs that Roman Reigns' name is not spoken on WWE TV. But, as I just said, a year and a half ago, he was being shoehorned in with heartless cancer jokes, but now, Roman Reigns' name not to be spoken on WWE TV. Okay, sure. Now, I must say this as well. This whole thing just seems like a massive ploy and a massive ruse and a massive power play to make sure that when Roman Reigns eventually comes back, whether that be when there's a vaccine or whether that be when Roman Reigns is content to, That could be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months. We don't know. But when Reigns comes back, if they don't mention him for 9 months, maybe when he comes back then, he might get a more positive reaction for a few weeks. People might have forgotten about Roman Reigns to an extent. People don't think about Roman Reigns for 8 months. If he's not being mentioned on TV, he comes back, takes on the Universal Champion, who will likely be Bray Wyatt. If it's within probably 6 to 12 months, it'll be Bray Wyatt. So when Reigns comes back, he won't have nearly as much hate. There won't be as much heat on him. So when Roman Reigns wins the Universal title back, it'll be trying to, in WWE, try to push it as though, this is what we want. This is good. This is Roman Reigns as champion. We haven't mentioned our golden boy in 9 months. Our WWE announcers and WWE programmers haven't mentioned Roman Reigns. So you feel more obliged to cheer for him. But in the end, this is still Roman Reigns. It's the same guy who's the face of the company, even though he hasn't gotten over, and this whole Roman agenda's failed miserably. So, yeah, Vince McMahon instructs Roman Reigns' name not to be spoken of on WWE TV. Vince instructs Roman Reigns to get the CM Punk treatment. That's what I'm calling it. As I said earlier in the video, I would say the Benoit treatment, but that's a bit dramatic. Okay, they're not taking Reigns' name off of everything. That's too dramatic. But they're trying to give Reigns' a CM Punk treatment. So expect to just deal with that and see that. So that's the first story, and there. So moving on there. So first story done. Roman Reigns and the whole thing with his name. Next, we move on to NXT releases. Now, as we know, this week for WWE, a fairly challenging one. I guess you could say that. The whole situation with the releases and the Black Wednesday, as Twitter was calling it, and everything to do with the cuts, which were totally unnecessary, okay? Given the money that WWE have coming in from the NBC, Fox, and Saudi Arabia partnerships, as well as the fact that they're profiting from not putting on live event house shows, so they're turning, likely in 2020, the biggest profit of any year in their history, but they still feel the need to make 30 to 40 cuts of talent. They still feel the need to cut these people who are depending on WWE for their livelihoods. Yeah, well, hasn't made Vince overly popular. And, we saw Seth Rollins come out and just shill the company, saying that, it's not right to send hate towards the WWE. We're doing what we can, and it's about being compassionate this time. Just the company shrill Seth Rollins saying something like that. So we saw Rollins say that. And in reality, the truth of the matter is that Vince McMahon makes these releases so that in the upcoming investor call and the stockholders call it's the stockholders call, that's coming up in a week or two? So he can tell the stockholders, the people who own shares and are invested in his company, his publicly traded company, he can tell them, look, I know what's going on with this pandemic, this global pandemic, this virus. Here's what I'm doing about it. I cut these 38, 40 talents, 40 people off of my roster, off of my payroll, so that now the company's more financially set. We've also got these TV deals. We're running shows and we're getting our TV money. So you as investors are going to make the most off of your investment. Feel free, invest some more in our company. That's what Vince is doing. That's what this draws down to. That's the truth of the matter. Okay, so with that being said, we got our big batch on Wednesday. Now we got these more NXT releases on Friday. So this coming from Ringside News. Pretty much, I'll just read this now. So WWE released a lot of on-air talent and over 100 more names within the company. WWE NXT releases are now starting to come out, and we have 2 more to report. PW Insider reports that Tanara Conti, who, just forgetting the report for a second, Tanara Conti is hardly someone who moves the needle in NXT. She's one of the many women who NXT have that isn't really being used. If you think NXT women and the NXT women's division, who do you think? Rhea Ripley, Io Shirai, Candice LeRae, Charlotte Flair, maybe a Mia Yim, Jessamine Duke, maybe, those kind of women. Shotzi Blackheart, Tegan Knox, Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez. You're not thinking Tanara Conti, okay? So Tanara is very expendable in that regard, and to add to the story, she had issues with her pay a while ago, so it kind of makes sense. She walked out and left her locker cleaned out, so Tanara Conti's gone. That one, it's a release, but given the pay dispute, it's not like a Drake Maverick thing where they just cut them from their dream job. The pay dispute, Tanara just kind of walked out. So it's a bit of more of a mutual release with the Tanara Conti situation. From here, the report goes on. Casey Michael of Squared Circle Sirens posted on Twitter saying, not Tino. So it appears that Tino Sabatelli was released as well. Now, if you remember my People WWE Should Release video, I mentioned Tino Sabatelli, and to be honest, I mentioned just about all of these people who've been released. I was ruthless in that People WWE Should Release video, and turns out most of them are being released now, and the times have got tough. So, Tino Sabatelli, the Italian bodybuilder, pretty much. I don't know anything about him besides that. I just saw his WWE.com profile picture a while back, and that's what I thought. So, Tino Sabatelli, he was released, which, I mean, fine. Also, Cesar Bonini, this guy, I mentioned him in my releases video. Additionally, Mars Wang. These guys are also quietly removed from the WWE Performance Center website. So, in other words, they were released, but it wasn't made into a big story. Which, that's what I think the situation is with these releases. A lot of people have been released, and WWE just doesn't want to make a big scene about it because, look, given the backlash they got on Wednesday, given all the hate and death threats WWE got, when they're this big publicly traded company with a bunch of financial freedom, and they made the releases, they got a heap of just backlash. So, additionally, 2 days later, you don't really want to be making a big scene that we released 36 more talents. We released 42 more developmental talents. Like, it's fair enough that these are more under the radar. Okay, so that's what we see there. More names are expected to be revealed in due course and will likely continue to come out unless WWE release a full list as expected. So that's the situation with the NXT releases. Realistically, as I said in that People WWE Should Release video, nothing overly shocking about this, if we're being honest, okay? I'm not going to lie and freak out like some of these channels who I'm sure in the community have gone, oh my god, Tanara Conti has been released. Oh my god, Cesar Bonini has been released. Tino Sabatelli released. Mars Wang released. Okay, those guys are gone. Oh, and not guys. Tanara Conti's obviously not a guy, but you get my point. So these people have been released. Additionally, one that I've heard has been released also, Big Dan Mather. I believe Mather. He's like this 7-foot just beast. So he's been quietly released as well, I'm pretty sure. It hasn't been fully confirmed, but he's been released, I'm pretty sure. So those are just guys who've been released in NXT. Probably more to come. Now, as I'm making this video, once again, who knows? Maybe by the time I post this in around 12 hours' time, we might have seen another big batch of releases. I don't know. This could be outdated, but regardless, I'm going to post it anyway. So that's the whole releases situation as far as WWE NXT releases. So that's that story. We now move on to WWE changing up television taping schedules again. Now, this report again comes from Ringside News. Pretty much, I'm just going to read the report. So, WWE is changing up their taping schedule yet again. This time, they are making some rather interesting choices to keep the show running. PW Insider reports that WWE is running live television for Raw, NXT, and Friday Night SmackDown. They'll also be pre-taping episodes every other week, okay? Should be pretty clear. So 1 week, for example, Raw 1 week is live, or close enough to being live. Raw the week after is taped, so that whole thing. This means that they'll tape 2 episodes each, and 1 will run live. They'll air the taped episode the next week, so as I just said. Here the quote is, the plan, which has changed before and likely will change over time, will be to tape 2 weeks per taping date. The idea is to tape in advance in order to cut down the amount of travel, talents, and staff would have to endure. Fair enough. Sounds very, what's the word? I forgot. There's a word I'm trying to think of. Very humanized, very humanitarian, very understanding from WWE, which this is clearly, as I said earlier in the video, this is Vince McMahon trying to meet the contracts, the NBC, the Fox, those deals, the TV deals, and the talents, meet them halfway in the middle, okay? This way, you're preserving the talents to an extent, not really. You're preserving the talents to an extent, and you're keeping it so that you can get the money from the TV deals, so you can still be as profitable as you want to be. Vince is trying to meet this situation in the middle, which is the best thing he can do, but at the same time, I mean, personally, I'm someone, you go one way or the other, and I'd lean towards the humanitarian, doing everything you can to protect the talents and the people involved. Because at the end of the day, the talents are the people who are responsible for the shows. If there were no talents, there would be no shows. Okay, so what do? You want to protect them so that there's longevity and protection with these talents. So what I do, which I don't know how the TV networks would do, how NBC and Fox would deal with this. But then again, I don't care how they deal with this. If you can be adults and be businessmen, you'd negotiate this situation. What I do is what Brian Alvarez suggested, which I know this could seem hypocritical to a few of you that I blasted Brian Alvarez in a video a couple of weeks ago, and now I'm saying I'd use his idea. But in this situation, I feel it's a good idea. What I do is you literally give these talents like a set one taping date. You tape every Raw show you need to do for 5 weeks, or 4 to 5 weeks, in 1 day or 2 days. You do a big lot of tapings, okay? You tape all your storylines. It allows you to have more longer term booking. So it allows you to do all of that. Lets the talents, do the taping, have their quarantine in the hotel room for 2 weeks, and then go home to their families for 3 weeks, okay? As opposed to this situation where talents are either at the PC or in quarantine in the hotel by themselves, as they have families who, some of them have children, some of them have pregnant wives, like all of these situations they have going on. Let the talents go home like for 3 weeks after their quarantine period, and then they can do another set of 5 TV show tapings. You can do that for Raw, NXT, SmackDown. That's how you should do things, okay? And I get NBC, Fox, they want live or as close enough to live as possible. The contracts apparently say that only the Christmas episode, the European tour, and I think there's another holiday episode, those are the episodes which can be taped. Which you should what you should do is go to Fox and NBC and say, look, we can't guarantee you the live shows because we're being humanitarian and we're trying to save these performers and let these performers thrive and flourish and not be immunocompromised. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet you halfway and give you weekly, fresh WWE content, because there's nothing like the WWE. That's why you sign these deals, because WWE is weekly, fresh, new content. So we're still going to give you the new content, which is what no other league or entertainment medium is really doing. We're going to give you the fresh content, but we're going to have it taped a week or 2 or 3 in advance, okay? So that way you're still getting your content and still going to get pretty much the same rating, because spoilers are not going to get out. But that way, we preserve our talents, you get your show, we meet you halfway. Instead, with this new story, the WWE are changing up their television taping schedules to doing two shows, one pretty much live, one taped. That way, you're kind of meeting halfway, but at the same time, that's still not doing much for the talents and the performers. What you're doing with that is still favoring the TV networks, because you have these talents every 2 weeks having to go and shoot these shows and do the tapings. Okay, wouldn't it be better to do a massive bulk tapings of like 6 weeks worth of shows, so you can let these talents spend like a whole month home with their families, being safe in this time of crisis and pandemic and whatnot? Wouldn't that be the best situation you could do? That's just my opinion, okay? That's the best way I can deliver it. I think I got that across pretty well. You guys could understand. The humanitarian, look out for your talent side on one side, and then the NBC, Fox demanding fresh live content on the other. Vince McMahon is trying to meet them halfway. He's kind of succeeding to a little extent with this kind of news story about the change up of TV schedules, but at the same time, it's not on the side of the talents at all. It's still either boycott the shows and get punished by Vince, or have to go through quarantine, or risk going from the shows straight home and endangering perhaps your children, your wife. Like, it's a very messy situation. So that's the whole thing of the TV taping schedule. I don't love what they're doing with the TV tapings myself, but I mean, yeah, as you just heard, I don't really love it. So that's that story. From here, just a quick one about the virus. The first pro wrestler, it passes away from the virus, which the person was named, or the Mexican luchador was named Black Demon, passed away at the age of 39, which this one is pretty interesting. I mean, interesting, that's a bit of a bad word, so I'll read the story anyway. So once again, Ringside News, Super Luchas report that Black Demon, real name Roberto Munoz Carrillo, passed away on April 13th. This was due to complications caused from the virus. I'm not going to say the name of it. It is reported that authorities have not confirmed his passing, but his family has. So that's the news there. Sonora, Mexico, authorities have confirmed 12 deaths due to the virus. They have now 100 confirmed cases as of this writing. So obviously it's a very sad situation. Our hearts go out to the family of that Mexican wrestler. Hopefully, they're all safe and well and that they get through this time. But yeah, so a wrestler passed away of the virus. This, once again, given how the virus is being reported on, this one is more so, this is going to be a bit more of like a kind of a political kind of commentary at the moment. Given how it's being reported on by the mainstream media, like quote-unquote reported on. The whole situation is just dodged to me. It really is. Like, seriously, I mean, JD from MY mentioned this in his podcast yesterday, but I'm going to have to mention this now. Literally, people who don't have this virus, people who have not been tested for this virus, like, pass away, whether that be from another condition or old age or X, Y, or Z reason. There are many reasons why people die, okay? People die for one reason or another, and the government and the health officers label it as the virus. So therefore, numbers, especially in the United States, mainly, are just skyrocketing, and it looks even more out of control than it actually is. Now, I'm going to mention this now. America, I'm not going to say on the whole, because that's a bit generic, but a lot of what I'm seeing on social media, from an American standpoint, it's not a great manner and way they've gone about handling this virus. Like, I saw yesterday on Twitter, there's literally protests in Minnesota for them demanding to go back to work. So it's literally this massive bulk gathering of people who are just about on top of each other, protesting that they're not seeing any effects of this virus, so they need to go back to work now. They need to go back to work now. This angry protest. I'm thinking to myself, if when 1 to 10 people go to that protest who have the virus but are asymptomatic and they don't know, literally the virus is being passed around to everyone just about. Like, a lot of people would get the virus from a protest like that. So I see things like that, and I think to myself, I can't be bothered. So, like, the way a bunch of Americans going about handling this very serious situation, and this isn't, it's not just America, but America's the main, kind of cause where this is going on the most. Just this irresponsible handling of this virus, okay? Just everyone stay inside and just let this thing, simmer down, and then let the vaccine come out when it does, and, monitor social distancing, practice what the governments and not the governments, practice what the health authorities tell you, and things will be okay. But instead, we've got, especially America, just these things like the Minnesota protest I saw on Twitter yesterday, where it's like, just do the right thing, okay? I get unemployment sucks, it's horrible, okay? But you've got to find a way around that somehow. Survive and prosper. That's what I keep saying about this thing. Survive and prosper. Deal with it. Which, that sounds pretty rough as well. But as Batista says, deal with it. But just find stuff to do. Occupy. Keep a good mental headspace. Okay? Don't be an idiot. Don't be a cretin. Don't go out in a massive protest with thousands of people in Minnesota demanding you get a job and demanding that the workforce goes back when literally it's a cesspool of virus. I nearly said it there. So yeah, literally, that whole situation annoyed me. But yeah, the first pro wrestler death from the virus happened yesterday. Mexican wrestler named Black Demon passed away at age 39. So that's the situation with the virus there. From here, we go to WWE NXT and versus AEW in the ratings. This whole thing, personally, I don't make AEW and NXT ratings videos. Like, I made one, and it did pretty well for views. I mean, just have to bring that up. But, like, AEW and NXT ratings, they're not something I really care about that much. And I feel like if I made ratings videos, I'd be really forcing them out because there's no real need to, given how unimportant it is. As far as me making ratings videos, I make ratings videos for a Monday Night Raw. Because the Raw ratings always interest me because you look at Monday Night Raw and where it was 20 years ago, and you look at the ratings to where they are now, I always find that interesting talking point. Talking about how when Raw hits record low ratings pretty much every week, the lowest non-holiday number ever, the lowest third hour rating ever, when they get those kind of milestones, achievements, records, when they hit those kind of things, I find it interesting because there's such a long-standing body of evidence, and you can see a year-to-year decline in the ratings. With NXT and AEW, given both of these, given NXT is WWE's third brand, okay, as much as it's the best content WWE produce, it's their third brand, it's their developmental brand, and given that AEW and NXT both have no crowds, given that pro wrestling has no crowds, it's just it's hard for me to invest in the shows, it's hard for me to care about NXT or AEW. You guys see that in the review, and if you made it to this part in the video, you're clearly like a supporter of the channel, so I'm going to say this now, going forward, the NXT reviews and AEW reviews, what I'm going to be doing is basically clickbait. That's what I'm going to be doing. So pretty much, if something big happens on NXT or AEW, I'm going to make like a kind of a fairly short video just talking about that like major headline. But I'm not going to be doing a whole show review. I'm not going to be watching NXT and AEW so I can do like a big review video of both of them. Okay, I'm just going to be doing like a clickbait headline, and then that's going to be like a couple of minutes of a review just to sum up the main thing that happened. Because given how low NXT and AEW ratings are and how low interest is in the products, that's what I'll be doing. For example, back when Matt Hardy debuted like a month ago in AEW, I did the full caps, Matt Hardy debuts in AEW, Brody Lee debuts in AEW, like that headline. I'll just do stuff like that, pure clickbait, because at this point, I don't really care. Most people don't care about NXT or AEW outside of like the major thing that happens, so that's what I'll be doing going forward. As for these ratings, this week, NXT wins in total viewership again for the second straight week, and then AEW, meanwhile, wins in ratings, because the demos, AEW just destroys NXT in. They really do. So that's the actual report. Showbuzz Daily reports that AEW Dynamite brought in 683,000 viewers, whereas WWE NXT brought in 692,000 viewers. So NXT won in the viewership, but as I said, they lost in the ratings yet again. NXT did not rank in the top 50 shows on cable for the night in ratings, which, I mean, that just goes to show NXT. Like, it's crazy to see NXT like that with ratings, and how NXT's audience is so, like, is your WWE fan who's been watching the product and watching WWE since they were children, really, and they're, like, over 50s. They're WWE lifers, the loyals who watch anything WWE do. That's who's watching NXT. So, it's crazy to see that versus AEW, who, granted, they've lost in viewership by, like, narrowly again, but they did so much better in ratings. Okay, AEW drew a 0.25 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic, which obviously is the coveted demographic. You want the 18 to 49. They're the ones who will pull their wallets out and purchase advertising. I've stuffed that sentence up. 18 to 49 demographic, that's the demographic of people who, they'll pull out their wallets and, see these advertisements from advertisers, and they're the ones who are going to invest their money in products. They're the ones who advertisers are targeting. They're the ones who advertisers want to get their products under the noses of. So that's the coveted demographic. So in that way, AEW win the ratings just by default, in my opinion, because AEW get a higher demo there. And just because more of the golden oldies in the retirement homes have NXT on, like, I guess they win in total viewership. But at the same time, it's half of one, half of the other. It's like, yes, you can look at it that NXT win in total viewers, or you can look at it that AEW destroyed NXT in the demos. Like, it's one or the other. Most weeks in this ratings war, in the 28 weeks of it, or 29 weeks, however many, it's been AEW beating NXT in the viewership and AEW beating NXT in the ratings, like, overall for the 18 to 49. So, it's just an interesting thing to note. Obviously, last week, NXT beat AEW by 1,000 fans, 1,000 viewers, which I believe that was 693,000 to NXT, 692,000 to AEW. So the ratings, basically, you've got 680,000 hardcore fans and followers for each show. Okay, the people who watched Dynamite the other day, like, they're the hardcores who watched 2 hours straight of AEW Dynamite. The people who watched NXT for 2 straight hours, they're the hardcores of NXT. So this is your hardcore basis of fans. Okay, everyone else, the fans that NXT normally have, so the 100 to 150,000 fans NXT usually also have, they're not watching at the moment because of the crowds. AEW, I genuinely feel like if they had crowds right now, they'd have over 1 million. I do believe that, because you look at what they had going on before, they had to lose the crowds. Matt Hardy, Chris Jericho, all that stuff would have been sick with crowds, blood and guts. That would have drawn interest. The Revival about to come in, Brody Lee and the Dark Order in front of a crowd, that'd be sick. So TNT Championship Tournament, like, all the stuff AEW had going on, it was so sick and so interesting to see what they were going to do in front of crowds, but that's not to be. So they've lost in viewership for the second straight week, but at the same time, they're winning by a lot in the 18 to 49, which is the main thing that matters. Okay, literally, Dynamite aren't losing sleep. Tony Khan, Cody Rhodes, the executive producers, the Young Bucks, Omega, the financial officers, the investors, they're not losing sleep in AEW Dynamite because they lost to NXT in ratings by 1,000 or 9,000 viewers. They're actually happy because AEW drew a 0.25 in the 18 to 49 versus a 0.17 in the 18 to 49, which, granted, they want to be getting better 18 to 49 ratings, but that's the coveted demographic. That's what really matters for Tony Khan and all the people involved in AEW, so that's the ratings there. From here, we go to the last couple of things in this episode. The full card, expected card for Money in the Bank, 2020. As well as that, we've got the expected card for Raw and the expected card for SmackDown in this coming week. Personally, looking at this card for Money in the Bank, I mean, the show is going to be saved by the fact that they're doing it in WWE headquarters. Really, the fact that they're doing it at the HQ, that's going to save the show. Now, I just found out about that a few hours ago as I'm making this podcast, and personally, I've had a bit more time to collect my thoughts on it. I think, as a concept, it's cool. It's something different. I said this in the SmackDown review. You can't be doing those ladder matches in front of the PC empty arena. That just doesn't work. It's brutal for the performers. It's brutal for us as viewers. So I like the fact that they're doing something different. Personally, having them shoot this at WHQ, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm definitely going to tune in to watch the show because I'm fascinated to see how they do the Money in the Bank show in front of the HQ. Which is going to be interesting to see how they do that. Personally, I've joked around with some of you guys in the comment section about things they could do. Like, I thought one thing, you could have Sasha Banks literally get up to the roof. She's right there. The briefcase is right there. Then Kevin Dunn, Bruce, or Vince, literally stand in the way and stop her from getting the briefcase, allowing for Lacey Evans or Tamina to get up and grab the briefcase. Something like that, I think, could happen. I feel like Nia Jax botching and putting a hole through the floor, or punching a wall and it just breaks the wall. Something like that's probably going to happen. We're probably going to get a cameo with Triple H, maybe. I don't know. There's probably a bunch of desks being broken in WWE headquarters. So it'll be interesting to see what they do for Money in the Bank. As for the expected card, pretty much, as of right now, I'm gonna do these expected cards and what we have to look forward to close each episode. Just to kind of give you guys a preview of what WWE has to expect and give my opinion on what I think I'll think. So basically, Universal title, Braun Strowman and The Fiend. As of right now, I couldn't care less. Okay, they did the stuff with the sheep mask on SmackDown, but at the same time, I don't really care. Like you can bring out the rocking chair, you can bring out Bray Wyatt's Hawaiian shirt, you can bring out the sheep mask again. I don't care about Braun Strowman versus The Fiend. It's a lose-lose. If The Fiend wins the title, it's like okay, he should have never lost it. And if Strowman wins, then Bray Wyatt needs to just vanish from TV and be released. Because if he can't beat Braun Strowman, there's no point even him being on TV. So that's the Universal title. The WWE Championship, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, probably the match I'm most interested in because McIntyre is the champion. He's my favorite guy they have on the show at the moment, so I'm interested in McIntyre taking on Seth Rollins. I'll be interested to see what storyline they do going forward on Raw, but at the moment, I'm kind of on the fence about what they're going to do for it, so that's my interest there. The Women's Tag Team Championships is probably going to be Carmella and Dana Brooke versus... God, Ringside News have Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross's tag team listed down as Bliss Cross Applesauce. Oh, come on, Ringside News, you clowns. So, the women's tag titles, I don't even care about that. I'm not going to give that any more time. The Raw tag team titles, Street Profits versus Viking Raiders. They're literally the only two tag teams on Raw. Genuinely, those are the only two tag teams you have on Raw. I don't count Ricochet and Cedric Alexander, okay? The Profits and the Viking Raiders are the only two teams you have on Raw. They're two of the only 5 teams you have in the WWE, because all SmackDown's tag team division is Miz and Morrison, Usos, and New Day. So that's what we got there. SmackDown tag titles, probably going to be the New Day versus Miz and Morrison, I assume. Or maybe they'll do New Day versus Usos versus Miz and Morrison in a triple threat where all 6 guys are involved. Whatever you do, I don't really care. Both tag team divisions are dead. The 5 teams on this show are the only teams that are involved in WWE altogether, so that's a joke. The men's Money in the Bank ladder match, we've currently got Daniel Bryan qualified, and that's it. Personally, if Daniel Bryan wins, that'd be cool, but at the same time, I think that has to go to Aleister Black, surely, and more on that in a minute. Women's Money in the Bank, we've currently got, 4 competitors announced: Asuka, Shayna Baszler, Nia Jax, and Dana Brooke. Out of those, personally, we've got the qualifying match coming next week where Lacey Evans takes on Sasha Banks. I feel like the winner of that match is going to win Money in the Bank. It needs to be Sasha Banks. Will it be Lacey Evans? Probably, because this is Vince. More than likely, it'll be Sasha Banks, though, hopefully. So, Sasha Banks should win Money in the Bank. And then SmackDown Women's title, Bayley versus Tamina Snuka. This one should be pretty obvious. You're not going to have Tamina come back after not wrestling singles for 3 years, have Tamina win the SmackDown Women's title from Bayley, when you're going for a SmackDown Women's title program with Bayley and Sasha, but Bayley will retain there. That's the Money in the Bank card we have to look forward to, and kind of furthermore, on that, we look forward to, I hate these shows, but we look forward to Monday Night Raw, April 20th, 2020, this show, it's coming in about 2 days from the time you see this. This Raw, they've got 3 matches announced. These were announced last week on Raw, but seriously speaking, none of them interest me, really. I mean, Rey Mysterio versus Murphy, Money in the Bank men's qualifying match. Personally, Murphy should win that match. I think Murphy is a logical option, but at the same time, given the quarantine and the travel bans, I feel like, Rey Mysterio winning would make sense. I don't know. I mean, does Murphy live in Australia anymore? I don't think so, actually that shouldn't be an issue. Anyway, Rey Mysterio versus Murphy, whoever you have win, I don't really care. They'll both do about as much as each other in these ladder matches, this Money in the Bank match in the headquarters, so it doesn't matter who wins there. Whoever wins, I'm not going to be bothered by. From here, Aleister Black, Austin Theory. This one is obvious. You can have Aleister Black beat Austin Theory, which one thing in this men's Money in the Bank qualifying match that I find interesting is that whole dynamic of Aleister Black competing against Austin Theory when Austin Theory is managed by Zelina Vega, who is Aleister Black's real-life wife. So I find that kind of interesting and kind of funny that Aleister Black and the person he's taking on is managed by his wife. So yeah, Aleister Black will beat Austin Theory, no doubt about it, no doubt in my mind. From here, Apollo Crews versus MVP, men's Money in the Bank qualifying. This is going to be Apollo Crews getting the win. No way around it. MVP said that his final match would be on Raw versus Rey Mysterio, the night after the Rumble, and he's coming out of his quote-unquote retirement for this. So Apollo Crews MVP, who really cares? Apollo Crews should win. So that's Raw. As for other stuff, we'll probably go on Raw. Probably Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins segment. That'll be interesting, I guess. Women's division-wise, probably, Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch probably cutting promos again. There's not much the Raw Women's division really can do at the moment. There is no real division. It's just probably going to be Shayna Baszler squashing someone on Raw. Probably going to get the Street Profits versus Ricochet and Cedric Alexander again. A bunch of nothing on Raw. So that's Raw. As for SmackDown, which, thank God there's 6 more days till SmackDown. I don't have to put myself through another SmackDown episode. So we got SmackDown. In hindsight, I was a bit too positive about the second hour of SmackDown yesterday. I acknowledge that. But at the same time, I really enjoyed the show. Okay, I'm being too positive. I hated the first hour, and the Sonya Deville promo got me in a good mood. So then I was watching things which I'd normally rant on, but I was in a better mood, so I said it was pretty good. That's what happened in the SmackDown review. As for SmackDown next week, we've got Dana Brooke and Carmella challenging Bliss Cross Applesauce for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. Honestly, I cannot be bothered. This doesn't deserve the time of day. Get it off our TVs. We don't want to see Dana Brooke and Carmella versus Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss for the women's tag titles. No one wants to see that. So that's what we've quote-unquote got to look forward to under Bruce next week. Then we've got a men's and women's Money in the Bank qualifying match. We've got Drew Gulak versus King Corbin. This one should be pretty obvious. King Corbin's going to beat Drew Gulak. Okay, Corbin will get the win. I think Corbin's a dark horse to win Money in the Bank, sadly. I don't want to see that, okay? But I feel like Bruce will have that happen. Gulak, Bryan's already in Money in the Bank, so having Gulak in there as well wouldn't really make much sense. Unless you want to do Gulak costing Bryan the briefcase, but at the same time, does that kind of Gulak-Bryan thing mean that much? I don't know. Corbin will win this match, and that'll be about it. Unless you want to have Elias cost King Corbin this match, I don't think it really matters. Then Sasha Banks versus Lacey Evans. This one, as I said earlier, Sasha Banks should win. Will she? I pray. A lot of you guys pray. So basically, that's all I've got to talk about today. The Elitist Effect, Episode 2, Part 2. Hope you guys have enjoyed the podcast. A lot's been covered in this podcast today. A good newsy podcast. So, yeah, pretty much the whole thing I'm going to do going forward with this Elitist Effect. Pretty much, I'm going to do 2 parts each week. Kind of like JD from MIT off the script. These ones, they won't be 2 hours, don't worry. They're going to be between, as you saw, 30 and probably 45 to 50 minutes. That's probably 50 minutes is the longest I'll go for one of these. So, yeah, each week, I'll try and have one that's more just kind of like an opinion piece, and me showing off my, not wrestling knowledge, but my kind of opinions about, a big topic. Obviously you saw the Women's Revolution one, which you guys supported really well yesterday. Today, we've got the part 2 with all the news and the juicy news and the information that's coming out in the wrestling world. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I'm not going to do 2 whole news episodes because it's pro wrestling. Usually there's not going to be enough news for 2 big juicy episodes. So that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, so smash the like button on this video if you haven't already. If you made it to this part of the video, thanks heaps. You guys are the reason why this channel is, thriving at the moment and doing well. So thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, once again, be sure to like, comment, and sub. You guys know the drill. Comment down below if you enjoyed any part of this. What you enjoyed most? What do you think about the news and all that? So like, comment, sub. You guys know the drill. See ya.